Hello, everybody, and welcome to Interfaith Paths to Peace. Welcome to Soul Food. We are so excited to have you all with us as we are in the process of having an opportunity to interview some social workers who have done art as well as research. So the idea of soul food is it's an opportunity to nourish our spirits by giving us an opportunity to experience art or music or meeting different local chefs to learn about their approach to creativity and what is the spirituality that undergirds that creativity. So by being exposed to their creation, we have a chance to expand our own souls and spirits with this understanding that art is something that can express the inexpressible and bridge worlds. And now more than ever, our worlds need to be bridged and we are in need of healing and nourishment. And so today we are actually going to be meeting with a professor from the School of Social Work at Spalding University, as well as one of her students who is also a doctor. He has a doctorate in education, but he has gone back to get a second master's degree in social work, which is a man after my own heart, because I also have two masters. After my first master's in Jewish theology, I got a master's in social work as well, because I wanted to think about the concrete ways of implementing all of the prayers that I had learned to lead other people in speaking. And social work is very focused on translating our values into action. Now, Dr. Conley will share a little bit about her class. It's a research class. And when I heard about what they were doing, I said, you know, people don't normally think of research as art, but to the extent that art is a way of expressing the inexpressible and is a way of helping people see things in a different light, this research that is being done is something that I think needs a broader audience. And so she graciously agreed to get one of her students to come and join her in sharing some of the work of her students. So Dr. Conley, I am going to unmute you. No, you have to unmute yourself. Sorry.
There we go.
So Dr. Conley, if you can share a little bit about the class that you are teaching, and then Christopher, if you can share a little bit about yourself, and then we will get right to it and looking at the work that you did, and I think it will stimulate a good conversation for us.
Sounds wonderful. So I first want to thank you, Rabbi Nadia, for inviting myself and a wonderful student, Dr. Christopher Jones, to share about this important work and this project. And so thank you so much for this wonderful opportunity. And so I am an associate professor in the School of Social Work at Spalding University School of Social Work, and the director of the graduate program there in the School of Social Work. And one of the classes that I teach is research methods. And basically it's, I teach students the importance of how to be a good consumer of research and how to make it applicable to their lives and to their practice as a social worker and as a social advocate. And so this particular method, this type of research is, it really is more of a, what's considered a participatory action research technique. It's something called photo voice. And it is really, the aim of it really is to work to empower those who participate in the art themselves. And so I've been doing this project for several years now. usually I do this particular project on the last day of class, in which we do a really full day field trip, and we do the work in person when we're in the classroom. Of course, because of COVID-19 this year, it had to look a little different. And so we had to really kind of do this photo voice project through online mechanisms and via the internet. And in a way, it has certainly, you know, made for a more impactful, I believe, type of you know, effect, because it's you know, we've done this digitally and online and sharing. It's been even more powerful. And then when we think about the interpretation that one can make of these pieces of art that we share, it makes for just a wonderful way of advocating for change. And so I think it fits right in with your soul food, certainly, you know, program, and that art is beautiful. Art can change the world. Art can change people. And so very fortunate to have a very, very strong section of students who did an amazing job with this project. And I'm really excited to share what's been done by them. And so I'm going to hand it over to Dr. Christopher Jones, and he can introduce himself and talk about, you know, his thoughts about this project.
Yeah, thank you. And Dr. Jones, if you can share a little bit about sort of who you are, what you do when you're not in class, and then a little bit about your reaction to this project, and sort of how the idea for this project came about.
Okay, thank you so much. My name is Christopher Jones, and my background started off in business. Uh, I got I received an associate's degree in business, and I love business, so I said, let me get a bachelor's degree in business, and I went and got my master's degree in business management while working in corporate America. Uh, I went and started working in nonprofit because I wanted to get a bigger picture, profit, nonprofit. And so as I was working in the nonprofit sector, I wanted to create a bigger change. So I said, well, let me start in the education realm. And so because I wanted to paint a bigger picture in terms of a global perspective. So business is great because it's global. Working in nonprofit, working for profit, it's global because it's giving you a bigger picture of the world. But I wanted to make a difference in the community. So I said, how can I make a difference in the community if I'm not aware of all the problems in the community? So I said, well, let me start with education. And so as I got into the education field, I began to notice more injustices and more inequities. And I wanted to make a change. So I was fortunate enough and blessed enough to uh, have the credentials because of my master's to get into accepted into a wonderful EDD program at Spalding University, where I received my doctoral degree in education. The emphasis is on interdisciplinary leadership. That means leadership in every organization, and uh, and I still work in the public school system, one of the largest public school systems in the country, and so I'm making a difference there. However, while I'm making a difference there, I notice more injustices, as I stated, and I also work in the inner city to where I see trauma. I'm like, wow, trauma. This is a major component that many teachers are not equipped to handle because they're certified in education, they're not certified in trauma. So I was blessed by the school leadership to be sent to a conference over the summer and a couple years ago. And while I was at this conference, one of the presenters said that trauma never goes away. And I had never considered that because, when people talk to people and they're saying they're going through a bad day or they're having some challenges, people tend to brush it off like, get over it, get over it, get over it. But how can you get over something that you may not have necessarily lived through or even talked about? And so we're minimizing people's feelings and we don't really understand because we don't care to understand. But that light bulb clicked when they said trauma never goes away. I said to myself, people need a conduit for change to be heard. And if I'm the only one, then I'm willing to be that one. And so I applied to Spalding again because I'm an Eagle and I know that their mission is to be a change agent, and I'm definitely a change agent. And they have a wonderful mission, and they believe in equity and equality for all. And so Spalding was my choice to work uh, in the social work department, and I've been blessed ever since. So not I've been. So as a social work student now, currently, I've had wonderful teachers, wonderful teachers. I mean, this has been an education that I'm receiving in classroom, but now COVID, but still in classroom, and it's life changing. And so one of my professors, Dr. Conley, has allowed her students to take photos of what their America looks like. So our class is diverse, and because our class is diverse, we're going to have diverse photos. And based on that diverse photos, we have interpretations of what those photos are going to look like. And we talked about those diverse photos. And so this life-changing photo presentation of the research that we collected is impactful because it brings about community, it brings about conversation, and it brings about connectivity of things that we may not initially been connected on because it's a talking point. And as you begin to talk, then you can begin to make changes and modifications that can benefit all. And so that's why I'm so excited and so elated to be a part of this conversation, to be a part of this call. And thank you for Rabbi Nadia for creating a platform to bring all together through social, food, music, and art because this is impactful.
Thank you so much. And I know that this question probably is that what is my America is probably not the question that photo voice students like in research answer all the time. Dr. Conley, you had mentioned that the idea came about as a result of students processing some of the recent events. I wonder if you can say just one or two words while I in turn go to locate the PowerPoint so that we can share it with everyone. Hold on, Dr. Conley, you're going to have to unmute yourself.
Sorry about that.
No, you're good.
So I want this particular project to be student driven, and so I want the students themselves to come up with the question that they want to answer with the photos. And so since the past several weeks, we have experienced an uprising, a revolution, and the thing is you're in community together in the classroom, and this everybody has their own experience with this experience now, and our students said, one student said, what is my America? And I had shared in the past that students have done questions such as, what is social injustice like? And so it just so happened that this question came naturally. I mean, there were some others that were presented as potential options, and I can't remember those. Maybe you do, Christopher, off the top of your head, but I remember then that this question was so powerful. What is my America? That all of the students said, yes, this is our question. We must answer this question.
So as we approach July 4th, this is a very important opportunity. So I now, hopefully you can all see the screen share. I am there, here it is. So here is the what is my America, and we will go to the first part. So students were asked to come up with the research question that could be answered with photographs.
Yes.
Do you want to share? Would you like me to go forward?
Yeah, so they just were asked to sign them into groups, and they were to take the pictures to answer, they themselves. So they did this individually. They took pictures of what represented what is my America to them. And then they worked in groups to come to a consensus on which ones did they really want from that group to represent and answer the research question, what is my America? Okay. And then we came together and had a discussion of those results. And so what you'll be looking at now is a series of photographs and statements, summary statements from our students about these photographs. So, and I'll just kind of give you a brief description of what they are about, the ones that I know of, and I'm going to let Christopher talk about some of those as well in group 3. But this was actually a photo taken by one of our students who actually commutes from Pikeville, Kentucky, and he just kind of wanted us to know that, you know, we see much of the uprisings for racial justice in large cities. And that's what we see a lot on, you know, various media sites. And he wanted us to know that also small towns are participating in social activism, and that it was very important for him to take a picture to let others know that, you know, there are other people in small cities that, you know, sometimes are, you know, people are misrepresented in small communities as being, you know, backward or racist or whatnot. And he wanted people to know that small towns have people trying to make social change as well and standing up for good. Next slide, please. And then this was taken downtown Louisville. You're going to see some similar photos as this, and how this speaks to the power of what is occurring, and how, you know, many students really identified with so many individuals who are taking a stand and making a change for good, to fight for equality, equity, you know, racial justice. So that spoke to her. I believe this one is actually from in the city of Louisville, one of the homeless camps, and it's right downtown. And the student who, you know, took this is my America, and it makes me very sad that this is my America, that we have individuals who experience homelessness who have this place as their home. And so this spoke to her, you know, loudly, as this really does represent my America. And the summary statement, I think the summary statements from these students are incredibly powerful. And I would like to read this. It says, my America, your America, our America, we may have experienced it differently, but it's the same America, or is it? America's homeless population continued to grow as the gap of inequality continues to widen. So for the poor, let alone the people who are suffering from mental illness and or drug addiction. Our America lacks empathy and concern for human beings. As Americans, we are entitled to several things listed as amendments to the U.S. Constitution. When the Bill of Rights was written in 16 or considered, the system set in place to support the American dream that many people dream of is also set up to oppress many people. History teaches us to accept that America is the land of freedom, the pursuit of happiness and opportunity, liberty, and justice for all. Next slide, please. And they continue, hatred, racism, inequality, and prejudice are all of the things that continue to keep us separate. But we have the choice to live a life that is about discipline and fighting against the grain. In my America, people have more power than they realize. Sure, we may stumble and fail, but at the end of the day, we come together and persevere. We have the opportunity to challenge social injustices without fear of retribution from the government. We have the right to disagree, the right to have intelligent conversations about the future of our country, and the right to have ignorant opinions. It is time that we let our voices be heard in ways that challenge norms and change narratives. We must stand together, struggle together, and win together to break free from this entrapment. Next slide, please. And now more than ever, community is essential. The need for our communities to continue to come together and stand a united front against the injustices our community members are facing is of the utmost importance. Let our America be embedded in community, the feeling of fellowship, and a sense of belonging. The idea of all for one and one for all, and that one of us suffers, we all suffer. It's time that we break our silence in regard to social justice issues and unify to acknowledge these issues and become an America that is more cultural competent. Sorry. It's time that we fight against self-destruction and develop leadership in a way that inspires others to speak of the injustices that racism has created and truly live in a world of freedom and equality. Currently, we are experiencing growing pains and are at a pivotal point in history. One day we'll look back and say that this was the beginning of the end of systemic racism in America. And there comes a time when silence is betrayal. Martin Luther King Jr. Next slide, please.
Thank you.
Is there a question about that?
I think we'll save questions for the end just because I can't see everyone. If you have a question now, please put it into the chat box, or also if you're on Facebook Live, please feel free to put in the comments, and we will open this up for questions when we're done with the PowerPoint.
Sure, absolutely. Thank you. This is so group 2's photos say her name, Brianna, and they saw this and said, you know, if if we say her name, we can't erase her. And so that was a very important photo to that particular student, in that it said we have to say people's names. We have to recognize the humanity. Next slide, please. And again, this is another day of uprising, revolution, activism in the city of Louisville, that spoke to students. Again, was how powerful this was, that the fight is continuing. It's not stopping. It's not just, it wasn't over in one day. And they said that, it's daylight and here we are, and we will persevere. Next slide, please. This one actually was from a student this is a student's childhood home on the right. And she talked about how, she had wonderful memories growing up in that house and with her parents. But the house on the left was actually owned by a policeman, and the home was really never kept up. And she said that oftentimes there were many restless nights because no one was living in that home. It was owned by a policeman, she said, but they I guess it was abandoned, and there were drug deals and whatnot. And she spoke to this photo. Her story was, how contradictory, sometimes things are, when you have certain expectations based on people's roles and professions and whatnot, and how she says, this is a photo that speaks to me about, the differences that oftentimes are portrayed based on someone's profession, such as the police person. This one, this for me probably is one of the most powerful of photos that was taken by one of the students to me. And the story behind this is the photos on the left are reflective of a new school, a new elementary school that was built in southern Indiana, right beside, to the right, a detention center. And how, why the choice was made to build this new elementary school right beside a detention center, so that children out on the playground on the bottom left could see, individuals who were detained on the right-hand side routinely in the, detention system. And how it's like, why did they make that choice? And why do children have to, be exposed to, those particular actions? And so that's very powerful. Next slide, please. And this actually was also a student who said how she felt like, kind of contradicted, because it's like this photo represents veterans who have fought for the freedom for our country and the freedoms of individuals within this country, and how admirable that is. But on the other hand, also spoke to the trauma that not only she experienced, but other members of the Black community when they see somebody in uniform. And rightly so, because of many of the injustices that have occurred in the past against our Black community. And so that was very, that was a very powerful photo for her. Next slide, please. And that statement is from this particular group was, when will it be our America? It will be our America when Black men and women stop getting beaten and killed, and when police stop getting away with escalation and brutality, when no-knock warrants are stopped locally and nationally, and when the white majority finally owns up to racist practices and strives to start inclusive community conversations and actions. When I find the courage to end my white silence to challenge status quo policy and social work, and life with individuals and families to fight for social justice and Black lives. So
Thank you.
thank you. Christopher, I'm gonna hand this one over to you just because I know that this was your group.
Christopher, you might need to unmute. You need to unmute. Perfect.
Can you hear me now?
Now I can. Yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. So this is a picture of homelessness in our city by the 64 overpass. And we started there for our particular group because homelessness is a global epidemic. And so because it's global, we wanted to focus on how, as social workers, can we make a difference in our community that poverty is taking over. Next slide, please. Now, because homelessness was our primary focus, we transitioned into COVID. And because COVID is the new pandemic that allows us not to think about homelessness, not to think about uh, people who may not have housing, or to think about poverty, because COVID has changed our whole mindset. But if we work together, then we can get through this, because, like a group member said, wherever you see a rainbow, that means that you can get through, because there's hope. The rainbow provides a sense of hope. Next slide, please. Now, we started with homelessness, and then we moved into COVID. And because of COVID, our society as a whole, globally, was not as active as we would be if COVID did not exist. COVID allowed us to become more sensitive and aware of our surroundings. COVID woke many Americans and non-Americans up, because it allowed us to have to think critically, as Nosage would state, and think differently. It made us think about our thinking. And so as we begin to think more about our thinking critically, we had to focus on the injustice of the police. And the injustice of the police, as you see them in a row standing by themselves, they divided our country again. We noticed it because of COVID. And had COVID not existed, we would not necessarily be as aware as we are with the divisions and the inequities that we deal with and have dealt with for many years. Next slide, please. Now, because we were initially focused on homelessness, but we are in a pandemic, and we still are in a pandemic, and we've been divided by our protectors, which is our armed forces, our police officers who are there to protect us but yet they divided us. Why? Because they have practiced unethical, unmoral, unthinkable, unfathomable tactics against people who are defenseless and unarmed. And so we, as a society, want justice, demand justice, and expect justice to be served. So we need to say their names and hear their names, such as Breonna Taylor, such as Ahmaud Arbery, such as uh, George Floyd, just to name a few. And we are not going to tolerate anything less than justice. And so the people have come together and are protesting peacefully and are continuously protesting peacefully, but yet the police officers still have divided us and still are keeping us isolated and segregated from one another because they are not ready to give up power and change policies. But we, as a people, are not tolerating and standing for this any longer because the people's voices matter and people need to be heard and stories need to be told. And thank you again, Rabbi Nadia, for creating a platform that people can become aware and more aware in what they're fighting for. See, because the reality is this: equality is cool because we all are created equal. However, if things are not equitable, things are still not going to be fair. So we don't just want equality and equity. Excuse me, we don't just want equality, we want equity. Because if you don't have equity, it'll still never be fair. Next slide, please. Now, at the end of the day, because we focused initially on homelessness, but our minds got sidetracked because of COVID, that we probably could have been more informed about had we been given a warning and not dismissed from our leadership the severities of what we as a country and as a society, as a global community had to endure because we weren't given the right information at the appropriate time. We all had to panic because some believed it was real, some believed it was fake, some believed it was unintentional, some believed it was intentional, but we didn't have the realness, the real authentic voice that we should have had through excellent leadership. And then because we didn't have those real voices, the side voices, which were the scientists and the doctors who study this type of pandemic, was giving real information. However, the leaders didn't want us to have the real information, so they tried to discredit and silence the authority of the people who do the work daily. Again, dividing us, the government dividing us, the military, the police dividing us. And so, because we are in a pandemic, we are more sensitive as a people to fight for injustice because we want equality and we want equity. And so, because of the pandemic, we are more sensitive and more aware. And because we're more sensitive and more aware, we're fighting for what is right, fighting for what is right, not fighting to keep the same what we've had because it doesn't work. We're fighting for what is right. We're fighting for what is equitable. We're fighting for fairness. We're fighting for equal treatment. If we have to dismantle everything peacefully, we're going to continue to fight. But at the end of the day, what we loved about this picture for the YMCA is the YMCA's mission is they practice mind, body, and spirit. mind, body, and spirit. You have to be well in your mind, you have to be well in your body, and you have to be well in your spirit. Number one. And number two, what we love about the Y is the number one largest 501c3 corporation in the world. And with that, they can have a person who is a CEO or a person who is on financial assistance come together. Every creed, color, religion, sexual orientation in the world come together, not even know, but they're able to fellowship together at one place. And so that creates equity, that creates harmony. And ironically, it's known as Calypso Cove Water Park, 9400 Millbrook Road. But Calypso, when we all come together, Calypso, we can dance together. It unifies us. And that music, that soul food, it brings us harmoniously together collectively. That unity brings about community, it brings about connectivity, it brings about change, it brings about conversation, it brings us together and gets us talking versus remaining in silos of isolation. And so that's what our group wanted to put together, how all this COVID and homelessness, everything is interwoven, interconnected. And until we come together collectively, things will remain how they are. But we have to come together to create change. Next slide. Our police have become not public servants, but an occupying force in an America that is overarmed, riddled and with social and economic inequality, and dedicated to maintaining the status quo no matter what the cost. Divided. The forces that seek to change present day America to a more equitable and just society are treated as criminals for a radical idea that the present system of systematic oppression and equality doesn't represent what Abraham Lincoln called the better angels of our nature. My America does not want everyone to have the same rights. Why? Just say their names. Why did these victims have to die? Why do their families have to suffer? Why does America have to keep suffering? Enough is enough. Our America must become a place for all. And until there's justice, we will not rest. Next slide, please.
And these are just a last few of the photos from the work. So this is a photo taken of a firefighter, and was this student thought that this was very important to reflect that public servants, should hopefully have Black Lives Matter at the forefront of your thoughts. Next slide, please. And this one was actually some family members of one of my students, and she talked a little bit about how some of our young people's their innocence, their childhood has been taken away from them, and how how that continues to be traumatic and traumatizing to family members involved. And so she wanted to share that. Next slide, please. No justice, no peace. And the student, I remember, said that no justice, no peace, and that this indicates that there will not be rest. There will not be rest until there, is justice. And so that was that photo taken for that particular student. And this person really was interested in that sign that that individual was holding up that reads, "Don't shoot and tell the truth." Truth telling, speaking truth to power, and how important that is for individuals who want to begin changing the world and creating a society that is, equitable, just for all of its citizens. And so, go ahead. Thank you. Our future leaders of America are standing up and fighting for policy changes in our America, for racial equality, social and economic justice. Activism teaches our youth to find their voice in the political world, to stand up and fight for change. Out with the old, in with the new. Throughout history, change made by a person, group, and community of people who share the same ideas and beliefs, coming together to advocate for the oppressed and discriminated, advocating for change in policies that were initially made by those in leadership and high economic status, white men. Although those policies created long ago, it is difficult to progress when leadership continues to be supported and run by the same collective group of leaders who appear to be some form of historic nostalgia. Social problems can only be changed by a collective of individuals with the same beliefs and desires to make a positive change in social justice. And the youth are telling us their time is now. Their time is now.
I want to thank you all so very much for sharing these pictures, these messages, and for narrating and sharing some of the passion that underlies research. If there are students out there who think that just being in school, you can't make a difference, clearly you all have shown that any research project can be an opportunity for social justice and activism. And the idea of using photo voice as a way to empower the voices of others and to begin to illuminate what can inspire us to work towards change. It was obviously very meaningful and powerful. We always ask our presenters, what is their recipe for peace? And I feel like maybe Dr. Jones, you were starting to hint on that when you showed the picture of the Y as a note of hope. It was very powerful to me, even watching these pictures of so many people of different races coming together to fight for justice. And that's where I personally draw hope. But it was very, also very powerful, Dr. Jones, you talked about how COVID, the time of this pandemic and quarantine, has actually been a time when people have started to pay more attention to things, and that might be part of the precursor to this justice movement that we're seeing, which is a very different way of thinking about it. I wonder if you all can share just a little bit more about your thoughts on if you had to create a recipe for peace, and it doesn't have to be like a physical add sugar and salt unless you want to, but if you had to create a recipe for peace, what would it look like? So I open it up, whoever has the urge to go first.
I'll take it if
Sure, yeah.
someone else. Recipe for peace. We often in the past have described America as the melting pot, the melting pot. And so you're blending everybody together in kind of like a big soup bowl, you know. But when you blend everything together, it creates a sense of oneness, but you also lose a sense of individuality. And so I personally don't like that idea of being the melting pot. What I think the perfect recipe, since we're talking about soul food, I think the perfect recipe would be a salad because you have all the accoutrements that you want in your salad, but every piece within that salad is their own individual. And everything created should be enjoyed by whoever's eating that salad. So whatever you want in your salad, put it in your salad. But don't get mad at my salad because my salad may not taste the way your salad tastes, but be willing to try something that's in my salad because you might like it, and I might like something that's in your salad. So if we have conversations around salads, then we can create conversation, which creates equity, which can potentially create change.
Thank you. Beautifully said.
Thank you.
Any closing comments, especially from people who are on our Zoom call or on Facebook Live? I invite you, if you want to share thoughts, reflections, questions, or not. I do want to thank you both so much. We may want to have you all back again because it's your perspective was really inspiring, and you know, part of soul food's idea isn't just nourishing ourselves with things that comfort us, but it's also sometimes nourishing ourselves with things that awaken us. Just like food requires sometimes something spicy to add dimension to the flavor, we societally have been maybe too comfortable, and your artwork slash research project, um, I think really helps to awaken in us that desire to experience that diversity that you beautifully described with the salad. I know that you all did, I'm sure, the Sisters of Charity of Nazareth proud, founding sisters of Spalding University who advocated for social justice and equality within Louisville as a whole. And we are grateful to you for sharing some of your work with us. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
And please be sure to check all of our other programs. We have tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. We're going to have Zazen meditation, and we hope that you'll join us then. And tomorrow afternoon, we're going to be having a conversation called Boardroom Buddhas, looking at equity in business. So we are grateful to all of you for joining us and hope to see you again soon with this online community that we are creating.
Thank you so much for the opportunity.